Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, downsizing, and the senior living industry. Coming up on the show, did you know that today, Sunday, April 16th, is Advanced Care Planning Day? Who knew? In fact, though, it's an extremely important topic. We sometimes like to tackle the tough topics here on Life Unrehearsed because we tend to put off planning for our future healthcare needs. Who would you trust to make your healthcare decisions? And do you know what would happen if you couldn't speak for yourself? Well, we have an expert in the field of advanced care planning that will help make this process a little easier for us. And on the second half, today's the beginning of National Volunteer Week, and we're going to talk about our unsung heroes across the country and especially right here throughout Greater Montreal. So many people volunteering their time for many organizations that desperately rely on them for their success. I'm going to be talking to Volunteer Canada, and I'll also be highlighting a couple of our local nonprofits that rely on the good graces of their volunteers to support our community. Boy, oh boy, what a difference a week makes. Just a spectacular day today. Hopefully you are able to get outside and maybe do a little yard work, a little walk, but just beautiful. I want to thank you for tuning in. And I would also want to wish a very happy Easter to those celebrating an Orthodox Easter today. Hope you're enjoying your day. Before starting, I just want to give a shout out to the St. Veronica's Seniors Club in Dorval. My wife Stephanie Cadu and I were at the Sarto des Noyers Community Center this past Friday in Dorval to do a presentation on downsizing and senior living trends. And boy, tremendous turnout on Friday and really just good people. And so I wanted to give them a bit of a shout out and thank you for the invitation to presenting to you. All right. As mentioned today, April 16th is Advanced Care Planning Day. Yes, indeed, there is such a day. In fact, it's a very appropriate topic for the show, Life Unrehearsed. And are you prepared to have someone answer healthcare questions on your behalf? Or if you're incapable of doing so, what will you do? Well, let's bring in Laurel Gillespie. Laurel is the CEO of the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association and former director of Advanced Care Planning. Laurel, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Hi, Matt. Thank you. Pleasure to be here today.
Well, thank you for joining us here on a Sunday. For definition purposes, what is advanced care planning?
Just for a bit of context, Advanced Care Planning, or ACP in Canada, is a collaborative initiative led by our organization, the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association. And this initiative aims to help people living in Canada prepare for their future and personal health care. And it involves a series of public awareness campaigns, supports that are community-based, and promotes ACP resources and guides. And the project is guided with input from the National Advanced Care Planning Task Group. So advanced care planning is really about reflecting and deciding what your future healthcare needs may be if you're not able to speak for yourself one day. And this year's theme is, if not you, who? And I'd like to add to that, that if not now, when? So advanced care planning itself is a simple 5-step process. However, I'd like to address that it is, as one progresses through life's milestones, like graduation, first home, marriage, or divorce, that it should be revisited often and it's not a one and done. And it should be a regular part of your life planning, just as important as your financial planning is.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. You're bringing up some very good points, which we're going to address as well. And I love the theme. If it's not you, who's going to make those decisions? And it tends to be a topic that we put off. But this is very personal to you, isn't it, Laurel? Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal story?
Well, we all have a story, right, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2007, I was 38 years old, a military wife and mother of 9-year-old twins and a 6-year-old. And I was diagnosed myself with triple-negative breast cancer. My prognosis was not great. I had a 20% chance of surviving 5 years. And that really forced me into thinking about what was most important to me and my family and what my values and wishes were and what I felt I would need for my health care if I wasn't going to make it or I wasn't able to make decisions for myself. So, and a point to that, too, is that my children grew up, because I have survived, being very comfortable having these really important discussions about what does bring you joy and what is most important to you. And what I realized that during a time of serious illness diagnosis, was that was not the ideal time to start thinking about your future healthcare wishes or needs. Like during a time of diagnosis, it can be really overwhelming. But suffice to say, it's still important to have these conversations no matter at what point you are in your health journey. But I don't recommend it when you're in the thick of it. It's better to do it now when you're healthy and in a good, solid state of mind, and get people who love you and whom you love on board with that. And also, I've been a caregiver to two in-laws who are no longer with us today, but one who had an advanced care plan and one who didn't. And the experiences were completely different. When we were taking care of the patient with the advanced care plan, it was a much better experience for all involved. And we knew clearly what the individual's wishes were and how they needed to be cared for when they could no longer speak for themselves.
I really like that because it's a perfect example of what could happen if the decisions and the plans aren't made in advance. In my world, working with seniors and dealing with elder care planning, I very often deal with conflict amongst siblings, and a lot of the times they're just put on the spot, and it really isn't their fault, And so I want to expand a little bit as we talk to Laurel Gillespie about advanced care planning on National Advanced Care Planning Day. There are some false assumptions regarding advanced care planning. Laurel, can you share some of them?
Well, I think many Canadians still feel that ACP or advanced care planning is complicated, that it's difficult to talk about, and that it's important, but many people haven't spoken to even their healthcare provider about it. And, some of the statistics, most recent that we have is between 2019 and 2021, the number of Canadians who talk to a family member almost doubled from 1 in 3, 36%, to almost 2 in 3, 59%. And 77% of Canadians think it's important to talk to their healthcare providers and their families about their wishes, but only 7% said they had done so. So there's, it's important that the younger you are, the more healthy you are, it's important to start these conversations, but that it's never too late. People think, well, why would I bother doing it now? This is up to you. You have some autonomy and you have some say in what your future healthcare needs look like. And it really, the main barriers seem to be a lack of information or resources. And Canadians also say that they couldn't afford a lawyer or a professional to help them. And 16% didn't even know how to prepare a plan. I mean, and these are free resources that we provide on our website through the great work that we do. Each province, it makes it a bit more complicated because they have their own legislation about accessing your rights. And we have a resource that was funded through the Canadian Bar Association that lays out every different province and territory and what those legislative or jurisdictional differences look like, so you can very clearly know what your rights are. Because in the lack of an advanced care plan, the government can actually go through a hierarchical system where they choose, the spouse or a next of kin or a sibling member. As the youngest of 8, and I say this with much love, there are siblings that I have that I don't know if I'd want them making some decisions for me. Not out of disrespect, but just because I don't know them, or maybe they don't know me as well as someone else would.
I think that's a very good point. How would you decide on the best person to speak for yourself? It must be a bit of a process and a difficult decision for many people.
It is, and it absolutely has to be someone that you trust and someone that knows you fairly well. And it can be more than one person. It doesn't have to be just one singular person. You could have 2 or 3 if you wanted. And interestingly, though, it may not always be your life partner. And there may be some very difficult decisions to be made, and it could be more challenging to make those critical decisions when you're not able to make these decisions for yourself. So you have to think about who that person would be, but it definitely has to be someone that you trust and that knows you fairly well.
Yeah, that's a good point. We just got a text in. What about people who have no family or close friends? It doesn't necessarily have to be family or a close friend, doesn't it?
It does not, absolutely not. It could be a neighbor. We've had stories where we hear of people who have housing insecurity, and I don't like the word homeless, but housing insecurity. And it could be the person that they spend time with, sleeping at night on the sidewalk beside them. It could be that person. It could be a friend, an acquaintance, but it needs to be somebody that knows you fairly well. And it has to be identified of who's going to speak on your behalf.
Right. Matt Del Vecchio here with Laurel Gillespie talking about advanced care planning. Laurel, we have to head out to traffic, but when we come back, I often get asked, what questions do I even ask in advanced care planning? Well, we're going to be addressing the top 2 or 3, 4 questions that you could ask in preparing advanced care planning. Welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Del Vecchio here, and we're talking with Laurel Gillespie about advanced care planning on this National Advanced Care Planning Day. Laurel, just before traffic, we talked about some of the questions that can be asked. I get asked this all the time. We tend to think of it, maybe it's just end-of-life questions only, but it's far from that. In your experience, Laurel, what are some of the more important questions that should be asked with advanced care planning?
Matt, I believe, these conversations that we have with those that are nearest and dearest to us or an identified substitute decision maker should cover the kinds of things that are important to you as an individual. And what are the things that bring you joy? What are your values? What are your wishes? What are the things that are most important to you as an individual? And that would include maybe your spiritual needs as well. And I like to think about, these questions that we want to have answered is to reflect that for many of us, there are fewer sunsets ahead of us than there are behind us. So let's plan for the inevitable. We're all mortal, but let's live the best life possible by planning ahead as best we can. There's no 2 sets of questions that are going to be identical because we're all different, and certain things are what's important to me might not necessarily be important to you. But it's having those conversations and having a way of documenting it, so that we can make sure that the best possible care is provided to you as a person, as an individual.
And like you said earlier on, the fact that if you're doing it, it is just going to make things a lot easier for everyone involved, as opposed to being in crisis mode. And like your situation when you were younger with a cancer diagnosis, having to, really make these decisions quickly and abruptly and not thinking about it too much in advance. And so, all right. We all agree we've got to put this down in writing now, not just say it. So how do we go about creating an advanced care planning document? Do you have to hire a professional for that, or can we do that on our own?
Absolutely not, and that's the beauty of this. Through the Canadian Palliative Care Association, as one of our projects, Advanced Care Planning, you can create your advanced care plan online for free, or we can send you out a hard copy booklet that you can complete. So you can request that hard copy if you'd like it, or do it online on our website, as I mentioned. And it doesn't have to be completed all at once. You can start, you can reflect, and you can come back to it at your leisure. And I think it's usually about a month before you'd have to maybe start all over again. But the steps, there's really 5 simple steps that are involved in producing your own personalized advanced care plan. Is you need to think about what is most important to you, your values, your wishes, and your beliefs. You want to learn about your overall health. You might be healthy today, but tomorrow it could be something different. But this may include current conditions that you have or that you want to better understand. Understand your family history a little bit and what may be an issue for you in the future. Then you need to decide on who you would like to have be your substitute decision maker or makers. 1 or more people who are willing and able to speak for you if you cannot speak for yourself. You want to talk about your values, beliefs, and wishes with your substitute decision maker or makers. Maybe even extend it to your family and friends and healthcare providers. And the most important part is document it or record it somewhere. Record what these things are that are important to you and your beliefs in your advanced care planning guide. You can put it in the form of a letter, a poem. Some people have done video recordings or audio recordings. But just so long as it's documented somewhere and that your substitute decision maker knows where it's at. And I think one of the most important things is, people will go and have their powers of attorney done or they'll go seek legal help. And there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody can afford to do that, however. But that this is not a one and done. This is a document, just like your financial circumstances may change and you have to, pivot and adapt and plan and shift and modify it somewhat. Your advanced care plan should be considered the same way, as more like a living document that as you go through life's milestones, circumstances change or your health situation changes. And so you want to be able to go back and reflect that and communicate that again with your healthcare providers and or your substitute decision maker.
Yeah, all very good points. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed, Matt Del Vecchio, and we're talking to Laurel Gillespie here on our Advanced Care Planning Day, bringing up some really important points here, Laurel. And you mentioned you on your website, and we'll give the address at the end of the interview. You've got some excellent workbooks just to help guide people through this. Can you tell us some more about these workbooks?
Oh, there's really one workbook itself to do your advanced care planning, but we have such a rich plethora of resources. There's resources for healthcare professionals to help have these conversations, as well as for individuals and families. There's games, there's videos, there's even a song that we had a Canadian artist write and perform as a way to, as an icebreaker, to have the talk, with your loved ones. So these resources are all designed to prompt discussions and conversation starters. And we're just starting a new project to make all of these resources and our workbook accessible to Canadians living with disabilities, so that no one's left behind and that every Canadian can participate. And we also created, because you also have Volunteer Canada coming up, and we rely heavily at CHPCA on our volunteer corps, that we created a universal workshop in a box, so that anyone in the community can go out and host an advanced care planning workshop to help people start their own in person. And we're here to support those who wish to advance the cause. You don't have to be a medical professional or work within the healthcare field to help those in our communities participate in this important part of life planning.
I even think you talk about a wallet card, which I thought was a great idea. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the wallet card is what we have today. I have visions for something a little bit more sophisticated later on. But once you've completed your ACP workbook or your advanced care planning workbook, and you can have it in hard copy that you keep at home, or it can be hosted online, there's a wallet card that you can fill out that identifies who your substitute decision maker is, or them, who would be able to speak for you if you were not able to communicate your wishes regarding medical care. And it identifies with their contact information so that they can be put in touch with, and you carry it in your wallet, just like a business card. And I encourage anybody who wants to learn more about that, or how to obtain one once you've completed your online or your workbook for advanced care planning, and we'd be happy to send you one.
Yeah, simple and smart. I just love the idea. We have to wrap it up here, Laurel. Just one quick question. When we talked beforehand, you mentioned that advanced care planning is a gift. And why is that?
Well, and this is personally, I believe that we have a responsibility to take some control over our future health care needs. And we can't continually keep relying on that magic health card and expect for the government to fix all of our problems and be there for every need that we have. So based on many stories, including my own, I believe this is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to your loved ones and your nearest and dearest. And there's no worse feeling when you're left wondering after the fact, when someone's gone, if the right decisions were made at the right time. And there should be no doubt in anyone's mind if the right care was delivered and the care of the person whom you love and loved, that was the right care that they would have received at the time. So to me, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the healthcare providers because they know what to expect. It's a win for the families because they know what's important. And then you can move on through your grief and bereavement knowing that you honored and respected that individual to the best of your ability.
So true. Avoid those conflicts in advance if you can. It really is a gift. If you're listening, look at your loved one right now saying, yes, I want to get it done. It really just has to begin that conversations. Yes, they're tough conversations, but much better to have those conversations than not to have it at all. Laurel, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on Life Unrehearsed. How can our listeners find out more about this advanced care planning on your website?
Yep, really quickly, www.advancedcareplanning.ca. And then you can click up on the upper right-hand corner to start your own plan. And if anybody would like any more information, please send us an email. It's info@chpca.ca. And also just to quickly mention that May 7th to 13th is National Hospice Palliative Care Week. So encourage, you start the conversation and you tell two friends to have this conversation. And then we can all ensure that we have the best possible care moving forward.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Laurel, you are most welcome. That's advancedcareplanning.ca. An excellent website, lots of resources and tools for you. Thank you, Laurel. Next up on Life Unrehearsed, it's National Volunteer Week. Have you ever volunteered? And maybe you're already a volunteer, or perhaps you're considering it. You don't want to miss out on our next segment as we celebrate our wonderful volunteers. That's coming up after the CTV News Update.